Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live DABCC webinar. We have a great webinar for you today. We have AppDNA on the show, and this is going to be a great episode. So we have an amazing presenter today. We have Ann Maya, who is one of the product managers over at AppDNA for the Aptitude product. So real quick, Ann, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this webinar today and to present to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to talking to this. Oh, go ahead.
No, please. This is informal.
Yeah, I was just going to say I do love an interactive session, so by all means, please throw those questions up there. I don't really like to listen to the sound of my own voice, so anytime you can cut in would be brilliant.
Absolutely.
And Aptitude is something very close to my heart. I'm the product manager for Aptitude, and we have some great functionality, especially in the space of application virtualization adoption. So the topic of today's webinar is really interesting for me, so I'm really looking forward to talking about it. I'm going to show you how Aptitude can accelerate AppV technical adoption. So a really simple agenda. I'm not going to kill you with slides. I'm going to dip in and out of the product to show you what I mean when I'm talking about the different areas. So the first step is adopting AppV. I won't go so much into the drivers. So why would you want to start adopting AppV technology in your organization? I think that assessment has been done already. A lot of the customers I've been talking to are really interested in resolving conflicts between applications, bringing down the cost of ownership for their machines and their environment, and being able to go with a more flexible workforce, a more user-centric model. And all of these things are good drivers for AppV. What I want to talk about is once you've decided to go AppV, or if you're on the verge of deciding to go to AppV, what do you do? How do you figure out what exactly it is you have to do to make that leap? And also talking a little bit about business logic. So how do you avoid the risk from a business perspective? So how do you take the information that you gather about the application packages and use that to utilize some good business intelligence reports to show you, so you can show your management why adopting AppV is such a good idea. And then I'll show you some of the innovative stuff our customers are doing with their use of Aptitude for adopting AppV in a business-as-usual scenario. And I'll give you a couple of scenarios of where customers have seen great savings in using Aptitude and AppV together. So adopting AppV. So the first step that you would take if you're trying to introduce AppV to the organization, and that is going from all MSI or all manually installed applications to a virtual application format. So the first thing you want to do is get an idea of what percentage of those applications will be compatible right off the bat. You don't want to invest a lot of time testing all those applications, because even if they're green, you still have to test it to determine it's green. So Aptitude offers a very, very simple technology of importing, reporting, and analyzing applications, and then immediately showing you what the RAG or the red, amber, amber as in yellow, status is, and green status. We give you the percentages in this chart. So I've taken a little screenshot from the assessment or the state view for AppV. I took a sample of 34 applications, so it's not very representative. What you can see is that the standard red, amber, green status is about 32% compatible for green, which means those packages could probably go straight to UAT after you sequence them. Then there's 44% that are yellow or amber, and those ones would probably need a little bit of tweaking before you can get them to work. And then a small percentage that are red, and that means they probably need some serious tweaking, or they may not be compatible at all. So we're showing you the standard summary as well as the after summary to the right, and that means this is how far you can get. So you can make about 61 or 62% of your applications green by using some of the suggested remediation steps that Aptitude will offer. Another good way, and this is again just the first step that you're taking to assess whether you want to adopt AppV, is to identify the key issues. So we've all heard a lot of the problems that you could have virtualizing an application, and I think sometimes what happens is that we exaggerate those issues to think that they're more prevalent than they actually are. So this view here, and this is again the first level view of the Aptitude product called the state view, and it shows you a breakdown of the percentage of issues that occur across your application estate. So you can see very quickly which ones are red and what are the red issues, so machine level components. You can see which ones are amber, virtual operating system, and runtimes. plugins. So you can check out the ones that are most prevalent, like interlinked applications and virtual operating system. And this allows you to focus on the key areas and not get sidelined or sidetracked by more complex issues that may occur in only a small percentage of the application. And then you can go a little deeper and see how many you can be made to work. So as I pointed out, where are you now and where can you get to? So the current state and the end state. So one of the key things is avoiding risk. In order to adopt AppV, you may be in a position, if you're a solution architect or an IT manager, to have to make a business decision, and it's your reputation on the line, so you want to be careful with that. We offer, with the Aptitude product, greater control over the AppV product by categorizing your applications by complexity and effort, assessing the time that would be required to migrate those applications, as well as telling you how many resources you might need or the extent of the resources you might need to migrate those applications. So talking to a lot of customers, I found that they were concerned about skill level. So they're not sure if they had, well, one example, and I won't tell you who it was, but one particular bank said their concern was they had a small group of gurus, AppV gurus, and then a larger group of, say, newbies. And they wanted to know how would they decide which application should go to which person based on whether it required extensive testing or remediation work or quite light. And that way they can better manage the resources. They also had an offshore team. So they were wondering, how do we decide which applications should stay onshore and which ones should go offshore? Should we send the more complex ones to our local team? That way they can interact more with the application owner. And also training needs for the sequencing resources. So as you can see in the estate view, we gave you the list of issues, the key issues. You can focus your training around resolving those issues. And what's more, you could develop your own solutions for getting around those, or your own processes. And potentially even, and I'll show you the product a little later, you could script your own solutions, which automates it even further, even beyond our product.
Hey, Ann, I have a couple questions already. You ready? We're going to dive into them right away. So this is an interesting question. What's the number of apps where Aptitude gets interesting? 50, 20, 1,000?
Well, it's actually any number of applications, but I think it's more about I think you're probably looking at return on investment. And let me, actually, I'll go straight into the product just to show you what I mean by that. So this is the landing page of our product, if you haven't seen it already, and it's broken down by the different reports that we offer. So 64-bit manager, for example, desktop compatibility manager, and I've only enabled 7 of the potential, I think, 13 modules that we have. So the way it's organized is we give you a quick look at how the compatibility looks across these technologies. So let me just show you AppV at the bottom. Does this render okay for you? It's not going too fast?
Yeah, no, it's good for me.
Okay, so we're showing in the Virtualization Manager AppV as well as XenApp streamed, and the percentage of the applications here, as well as the total number of applications that fall into each of those categories. But one thing you can do is once your applications are imported in and analyzed, you can run an effort calculator report. And this is unique to our product, and it's something that's built on the back of a lot of application knowledge within our teams. And we started off as a service organization that branched off and is now a completely different product team. But what came over was a lot of product knowledge and a lot of knowledge about how managed estates work. So our applications are broken down by different licensed requests. So what I've done is just selected all non-web applications. And what I'm going to do is run an effort calculator report on just AppV. We could run it on any of the other modules as well. So you can see our chart here again, the customized RAG summary. So those red, amber, green notifications for each rule can be customized. And I've customized some of them, so my customized report is slightly different than the standard report. So now if we go into remediation, you see that I've selected 31 applications. And here are the type of rules that we're checking against. There's quite a lot. I won't pause. I just want to give you an idea of what's there and how configurable this product is. So we give not just the rule and its description of the rule, but we provide an action that you need to do to resolve that issue, as well as action detail, giving more specifics. As well as that, we're assessing the effort that it takes to actually complete that action. And again, there's custom RAG summaries there.
Cool. I have another question for you, and that is on the slide you had before the demo talked about percentages. Are those the percentages of applications compatible with AppV or Windows 7?
AppV.
Okay, cool. One more question.
So I was just showing the AppV report. Okay.
Cool. One more question, then it's back to you. Will Aptitude tell me which apps I can virtualize easily and which apps are compatible with Windows 7?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the panel to the left, these reports show Windows 7 as well as AppV and an overview summary. So when I finish with the Zephyr calculator, I'll go into the overview summary and show you how you can view them side by side. So if you were interested in AppV and Windows 7, maybe even 64-bit, you could view them all and see which ones are compatible. And
Sounds
just
good.
Take this through to the end here, and what we have now is results. So we've put a cost next to the actual testing. So because Aptitude is automated, you now no longer need to do rigorous testing. And manual testing has a lot of issues associated with it in that you can't have consistent testing. There's a lot of iterations. The more platforms you have, the more testing you have to do, so et cetera, et cetera. What we do is automate that testing. So we can also assess how much time and effort you're saving. And here, this report is based on variables provided by the customer. So these are all configurable. You can change anything in yellow. What I'm going to do is use the information from my 36 app estate or 31 app estate and extrapolate it to 300. So, so this is when the question was 50 to 100 to whatever. If you take a representative sample of an estate of, say, 1,000 applications, and then you put 1,000 in this box right here, I can actually make it 1,000 just to make it a little more meaningful. Well, then what we can do is tell you, based on that sample, how much savings you're actually going to get at the end. So here's the sample, and here's extrapolated values, and here are the relevant savings. All of these worksheet values are configurable, and we base it on standards, industry standards, the cost of a remediator, stager, and project manager, remediation team, etc., the time it takes to actually perform the remediation actions. These are all default values, but you can change them. And the resulting report is a Word document. And the handy thing about that is that you can put your own name on it. And you can send it to your business manager and say, here's a little something I threw together based on the AppV report. And what that does is it creates a business case for you to decide whether you want to go to AppV or not. That value that I put in for was customer here. And if I scroll through, we've also given a lot of information about how to interpret this report. So do you remember I put in 1,000 apps to just extrapolate that 36 out. A quick breakdown of how long it would take to perform the same project without Aptitude and how long it's going to take with Aptitude. It gives you the basic assessment before. Here's the story before. Here are the main issues. And here's what it would look like after. We also break down the actions that would be required, the most prevalent actions that are appear in your estate. So this Word document is using data that's actually generated from your application set, so it's very meaningful. So it takes all the guesswork and all the risk out of a migration to AppV. I think what a lot of people have found, and what and I'll share some slides with about our customer stories later, is that a lot of this is helping them make that decision to go AppV much faster. And it takes away the scary what will happen if and how much will this cost? Will the budget overrun? So you can see here there's also a breakdown of the remediation times as well. So that's all provided for any, and it can be dynamically generated at any time. So to answer that second question, the overview summary will show across all the modules. Oh, I need to select applications. Across all the modules, how the applications look. So we have different module groups, 64-bit manager, desktop compatibility manager. And so you can look at Windows 7, and we also have an XP module. So if you're in the middle of a migration, you can look at the two. And then AppV as well. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, If it doesn't answer the question, please ask a follow-up question. We'll make sure we do, but I think that was a good answer. So I have a couple more questions for you. For which virtualization solutions will this tool provide reports? I believe all of them, right? Or, well,
yeah,
everything that you support.
Yeah, everything that we support at the moment is AppV and XenApp Stream. But from my experience, a lot of the virtualization technologies have the same limitations. So drivers and migration, or not migration, sorry, dynamic suiting between the applications. So dynamic suiting would be an AppV term, but a lot of the application virtualization technologies, because they isolate apps, they also you need to know that, so you know which ones need to sit or layer into the same environment.
Cool. And then
so, sorry, go ahead.
No, you please continue.
I was just going to say, so we, and also file type associations, what kind of things do you need to have exist on the target machine? What things do you need to worry about? So virtualization solves a lot of problems. One of the things that still needs to touch the operating system would be things like file type associations. Now, if those associations are shared with core applications, you still need to worry about them regardless of the virtual technology. So there's virtual limitations in the technology itself, and sometimes it's the management of that technology. And for that, you can use a lot of the same rules we already have for AppV and XenApp Stream.
Perfect, perfect. Let's see, and then someone asked about VMware ThinApp. Do you guys have any considerations for this?
Yeah, we were looking at that because it'd be very easy for, very easy, I'm not a developer, but very easy, I think, in my humble opinion, to put that module together. I think what we were looking for is a market case. So at the moment, we went with the two biggest, and that was AppV and XenApp Stream, but really interested in hearing from people if ThinApp is something that you would like. And we have been looking at it. We have been investigating. I think it's just a matter of prioritizing features.
Perfect. A couple more questions. Here's a question I absolutely love. Basically, you're showing us a demo. What does it take to get to that point? What does it take to install Aptitude in somebody's environment? Like how many web servers, app servers, database servers, etc.? What's the architecture look like?
Aptitude is a client-server, server-client application. And so you have a server component which has a SQL Server backend, and it uses IIS web services to communicate between its components. So the setup could take, it depends on the environment as well, and how many applications you'd like to accommodate, and how many clients you'd like to hook up. But it wouldn't take more than a couple hours to set up the whole environment. Once that's done, though, you don't need to touch it again. It's there, it's good to go. We've used it in customer environments where we have upwards of 9,000 applications going into the database. So it's used in very large estate organizations. So once you have it done, you're good to go. And the modules, I was kind of mentioning these different modules here. As you buy them, you can snap them in. And one of the handy things, the name of our company is AppDNA, and it's quite apt. We take the application DNA and we store it. And that's stored as in what I call metadata. That metadata can then be reused for many, many other things. And our whole framework of the solution is based on how we can then take that information and show it in different ways. So I showed you one layer of reporting, and that was a state view. We're looking at the overview report as well. But we can slice and dice that data into lots of different ways. We can show you the issues for all applications. We can show you actions. But the setup is kind of a minimal piece of it. What it's doing is it's saving you huge, huge time and effort downstream. And maybe I can get back into the... Yeah, go ahead.
I have one follow-up question from that one, and from that previous question. So does that does an agent? Is it required to have an agent on each client device to gather that info?
No, we don't use an agent. What we do is we have a client, and that client imports applications. So the applications are imported from the client. A lot of customers have what they call a definitive software library, or DSL. And what we do is you can navigate to that folder. We can recurse to that entire folder and pick out all the MSIs in that environment, as well as executables. And I'll show you a demo near the end of how we can suck in an executable, actually generate an AppDNA package, suck it into Aptitude, and then give you the report afterwards.
Perfect, perfect. And then one more real quick question, then we'll get back, and I have a bunch of questions here, but we'll hold these for a little bit. Otherwise, we'll never get through this this webinar. And the easy question is there a limit to the number of apps that you guys support?
No, there isn't a limit.
Cool.
It's a scalable solution, so you could actually have multiple databases. We have something called a site switcher that will allow you to switch in and out of databases. So the limitation is SQL.
Wow. Okay, it's all yours.
Okay. All right, thanks. So this slide here, I should have probably spelled it out, but business as usual, BAU. And I just wanted to kind of highlight what a typical packaging environment would look like. And by packaging, I also mean sequencing. So an application is the blue dot there. It enters into a stage called discovery. And that's usually end-user driven. So the end user sometimes might install it on the end platform just to make sure it works before they say, yeah, I want this app. Then it goes into the packaging team. And the certify stage is usually somebody does a quick spot check to see are all the application binaries there, do they have what they need to carry on. And usually what people ask for is a set of installation instructions and a test plan. I know from my history in packaging that you never ever get that information. When you do, it's usually not too good. So what happens there is after that certified stage, this reviewer, hands it off to the packager, who then attempts to turn that into a standardized and high-quality package. What can happen, though, is there's a lot of churn between this group, the packaging group, and the QA team, and then back to the certification team as well. So these arrows represent delays and cancellations and iterations through the process, and all of that means time and money. So by the time this application ends up and it gets that stamp of approval, it is certified for these platforms and these technologies, 2 weeks can pass. And I've heard horror stories of it being something like months, and that is pretty horrific. But what we found is if you put aptitude at the front of this process, that whole stream becomes much more streamlined. So that application goes in, and if aptitude takes care of all that discovery and takes care of creation of those installation guides, well, then that application could flow through the system much cleanly. Then you get your stamp of approval at the end, and everything is accelerated. So I just want to draw that process out to explain how aptitude is being used by customers today. After the aptitude analysis, that red, amber, green status drives the behavior. So if you can see here, this application is green in App V, green is in App Posted, green in Windows 7, and green as far as performance and dependencies. And these are relevant for Citrix environments. So your decision can be made. If the application has the following RAG status, you can decide it's okay to go physical, but it's also okay to go virtual. And then the next decision is where do you want to host it. So it takes you to that optimized application delivery endpoint very, very quickly and easily. And you can see that sometimes it's red, so it can be fine as physical, but not on a 64-bit machine because it is red for 64-bit. We call this concept forward pathing. And forward pathing is something that we spend a lot of time and effort trying to hone. And you can get some of that through the overview report, and some of it as well by merging our remediation reports. And the deep dive remediation reports can be merged across multiple modules, and it gives you this view. So a little bit about App V conversion and testing. Microsoft has created an App V CLI, command line interface, and what this allows you to do is hands-free sequencing. It's free, it supports the latest App V releases, and it allows for options like feature blocks and paths. So this is with SP1, 4.6 SP1 offers you the ability to modify feature blocks and paths as well, which is it's a pretty good feature. They also are offering something called accelerators, where you can essentially record how an App V package is sequenced. And if you think about these new advancements in the App V sequencer, and if you look at our demo, I'd like you to keep that in mind. I'd like to have your head start ticking about how you can make our optimization even better. Aptitude can leverage that CLI, and we can do that through the use of what we call execution profiles. And it also can be incorporated into other processes like packaging, generation of those installation guides I was talking about, as well as aptitude imports. So there's a huge amount of configuration you can put around aptitude to really maximize the automation. So not just with App V, with any technology that can be run from a command line and hands-free, you can automate. That includes packaging. So what we're looking at here is we can take any application, any type, any format. So be it an executable, batch file, managed soft format, any format at all, and we can convert that into your end product, and in this case, AppD, an AppD package. So what happens is, behind the innards of Aptitude, we could start a VM, we could sequence that application, import, report it, and remediate that application. The remediation can be done by an end user, or a skilled user, or some of that remediation can also be done eventually within the Aptitude product if you implement scripting. So what happens is, between the starting of the VM and the sequencing, Aptitude itself will revert the image back. So you could load up multiple applications and have all of this run unattended overnight. And you come back in the morning and have a stash of AppDNA packages. If the application package, so sometimes what happens is the report will be green and you're good to go with those AppDNA package and carry on. But if it happens to be amber or red, meaning you need to do some modification, we'll actually tell you what that modification is. So for actions on a green app, it's no action. If it's amber, we'll tell you you might consider DSC. And in this case, you need to kind of make that decision and go in there and implement DSC, Dynamic Suiting Composition. And that's adding an extra or another AppDNA package to an existing one if there's interoperability or middleware concerns. Excuse me. And for red applications, change OS is an unfortunate name, and we will change that. But what we mean here is not actually change the operating system. We mean modify the operating system to avoid problems. So in the case of AppD, maybe that means putting the driver down onto the target build rather than saying that it's not compatible at all. So in this case, and I think that some people have been confused by it, our red does not mean it's the end of days. Our red means you could potentially change these things, but they might be a little bit more manual. So the aptitude value is more than reporting. It's more than compatibility checking. We're actually moving into the space of automation of these systems and for overall optimization. And customers are really receptive to sequencer and relying on proprietary technology. So when you use the Microsoft provided sequencer, what you're doing is you have a fully supportable package. And as the technology changes, you don't need to change what you're doing because the sequencer will adopt. So for example, if you're using a conversion technology, you need to be careful if the format, so the AppD team has been talking for a long time about changing the format from an SFT file to VHD. If that happens, does that affect how your conversion tools work? Does that mean that you have to go in and modify processes? These are the things that are important to remember.
Hey, Anna, are you ready to take some more questions?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We actually have about 9. We have 10 now, so we'll get through a few, as many as we can, and then we'll jump back to you to make sure that you have time to finish the presentation. Of course, we'll stick around to answer all the questions at the end if everybody has time. So okay, so real quick, is the effort calculator included as part of the core product, or is it a separately licensed module?
It's part of the core product.
Cool. How does Aptitude determine if an application is compatible with AppV, and to what degree of compatibility?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. So I think what they mean is what kind of rules do we check against? And do we show you that degree of, so let me just go into the AppV report. Maybe that'll make more sense.
I love demo answers to questions. Those are the best. Let me show you.
Okay, let's look at. Okay, so I did mention you could merge reports, and this is how you would do it. We show you the different reports that you're licensed for, and you can hit merge and see them all. I'm not going to do that because it's just going to make this dirtier. I want to focus on just AppV. But you can see here some of the things we're checking for are DCOM and COM+, interlinked applications, virtual operating system, and let's have a look at that. For all of our issues, what we show is the manifestation. So how would this issue manifest itself? And then the remediation, how would you fix it? So in environment variable changes, changes made by an application or its installer may not be captured successfully by the sequencer. So this is something that I tend to customize to make that green. I think in past versions of that, the SoftGrid, I know SoftGrid 3.0 had some issues where they didn't always capture the environment variable. It kind of depended on how the packager had packaged that application or sequenced it before they checked it. So sometimes environment variables be missing, and that could affect how the application is being used. So the remediation is to make sure that you check that the OSD has that information. And there they are there. Also, I think there was a bug in an earlier version of AppV, or SoftGrid, sorry, and it's been since fixed, but it didn't always append to the path variable. Sometimes it overwrote, so that also gave you strange results. I did mention file type associations before. So this one is, it's checking to see that you have file type associations. And this is a consideration if that file type is shared across multiple applications. So I did see an issue very, very early on, a few years ago, when an application was sent to a Citrix environment, and it shared a file type association with a locally installed application. And what happened was when you launched the application, it was trying to launch in the virtual app, but the virtual app didn't have the functionality that that particular call was making, so it kept crashing out. And they complained that the virtual app was broken. And that wasn't the case at all. It was just a conflict with file type association. So it's just something you need to keep in mind. But this is the level of reporting that we offer, and these are the types. So these are just the issues that triggered with this particular really old version of Documentum. And you can see how many times it triggered these particular issues. We also have stuff in here that's green, and you may wonder why would we report on green. Well, every customer's environment is different, and sometimes something that's green to one environment may be amber or red to another. So we give you that flexibility to change that if you want to. So I hope I answered that question.
Sounds good to me. Okay, next question. Does Aptitude remove the need, oh, I love this one. Does Aptitude remove the need to employ an application or an AppV guru?
No. No, I think that those rare individuals are very hard to find and hard to train. And the whole point is to better utilize the resources that you have. So in that my example of where this customer had 2 or 3 gurus, obviously they were like gold dust in that environment, but they were sometimes wasting their time on applications that were quite simple. So I think what Aptitude offers is it gives you the ability to better resource manage. So if you have those gurus, use them to the best of their ability. They shouldn't be fiddling around with little, green applications. They should be looking at just the amber and reds. The green ones you can automate and cut those out straight away. What it means is you probably need fewer newbies.
Cool, cool. Okay. Next question. Will Aptitude tell me if an application needs to be sequenced on XP and Windows 7 based on differences in the OS? Also, for RDS / Citrix, will it report if an AppV version will work on the server even if the application has problems with server-based installs?
Okay, so in that case, the first question is, will it tell you what you need to sequence on? And the simple answer is no, because you have to actually import it from some build. I always go with the ethos of the least common denominator. So if your application is going into an environment with XP and Windows 7, sequence on the the XP. Some applications have features that light up on Windows Vista or Windows 7. In those cases, you kind of need to make a judgment call. But I think most of the time when you package or sequence, you do it on the lower platform. And for the other question, AppV is not going to solve all the problems of compatibility, so you still need to check against Windows 7 or the server architecture. If the application package has a problem in Windows 7 that can be resolved through AppV, we do report on that, and we give you that information in the issues report. Same goes for the server. So if there's an issue with compatibility on that server that can be resolved through AppV, we do provide that in the action detail.
Cool. Does Aptitude have a tool to package applications as well, as for example, Install Shield or Weiss Installer?
Yeah. So we have something called, we have a packaging technology. It's a rudimentary one. It doesn't create a production-ready MSI package. So we do have a technology, and the main point of that is to just get the delta. So get a snapshot of what files or what registry keys are being installed to that application. just so we can get the metadata into the package or into the aptitude. The reason for that is if you don't really need a packaging tool all the time. So let's say a customer, and a couple of them, I had a couple customer stories there I hope I can talk about near the end, who decided we're going to go all AppV. And they were hoping for maybe 80% virtualization. I think they achieved quite a high number, maybe even close to 90, well, one of them, close to 90 so far in their project. And one of the things that they were looking at is how can we do this faster and quicker and cheaper? And if you think about the kind of tools that you need, the sequencer is free, and our rudimentary packaging tool is free. If a small portion of your applications will actually need to go to MSI, we can give you that view up front. So we can show you how many will actually, so let's say you're being a bit of a pessimist and say only 75% of the application estate can be virtualized. Still, you only have to then package a very small number of them. So you don't need to buy that packaging tool unless you actually feel it's going to be necessary. So it can help with your licensing as well. So the point of that the tool is the way that our approach is for the optimization or automation is that you could, if you did have Wiser Install Shield, you could install it onto that virtual machine that gets generated when you take a non-MSI package in and convert it. So you could actually, and we've done demos of this in the past where we've put a version of Wise or a version of Install Shield onto the VM, and you could generate both an AppDNA package and a production-ready MSI at the same time.
Sounds good. One more question, and then we'll let you get back to it. So, are rules, or it's a two-part question, are the rules customizable that determine RAG status, RAG status? Do you provide updates to the rules on a regular schedule?
Yeah, good question. Yes, they're all customizable. Actually, nearly everything in our product is customizable. So yes, the rules themselves are customizable. The actions are customizable, and so are the action details. So if a particular environment customer or a global service integrator, if they have a solution that they've created for one particular issue, like DSC, they can create their own action and their own action detail and apply it to whatever applications they feel is necessary. Completely configurable. And so is the complexity. We gauge the complexity of the application, and the thresholds that we use are completely configurable. That's what we're all about. So that's why we're tool agnostic as well in our solutioning for the automation.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, I'll let you get back to it.
Okay, so what I'll show you now is, let me just go back to this slide. So how does this work here? And I mentioned that we could start a VM, and on this VM you could put the AppDNA Sequencer or Wise for Package Studio, and then automate this install. It's all driven by a script called an execution profile. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to select an application here, Notepad++, and I can select from here an execution profile. I'm going to select one called Sequencing with SoftGrid 4.5. And here's the command line that will run. So it's going to run the sequencer on the CLI and through this VB script that's embedded into this execution profile. And it'll run this installer exe. This is not a silent install for this executable, but if we had a silent install routine, we could offer it there. I'm going to run this automatic, which means the actual product will continue to run through each of the tasks defined in the execution profile. So the execution profile is script driven. It can define a series of tasks, and those tasks can all be run. So what's happening here is it's going to connect to a virtual machine. And let me just load that virtual machine now. I'm using VMware Server 2.0. And I have a Windows 7 machine. So all of this is running on my laptop at the moment. I have the server component for Aptitude as well as the client component. So we hook into VMware Server, which is free, 2.0, and Microsoft Virtual Server 2005. So what I did is I had my own virtual machines created here, one for XP Professional, and those machines are loaded into this interface here, and this is all VMware for 2.0. What Aptitude will do is launch a remote admin console that will hook into that virtual machine and load it. And I have a snapshot created for that VM, so what it'll do is once it's completed its work, it'll revert back. And revert the VM back to its clean state. So you're always packaging on a clean state. I have a central location here in this IP address, a folder called apps, and that holds all my executables. So here's the VM launching, and you can see at the top the remote control console. You could switch in and out of automatic or manual mode by clicking this button here. So what's actually happening is I ran it automatic, so it's going to click through as many things as it can before it's going to need my input, because Notepad++, and here it goes, Notepad++ is not assigned to install. Never a good idea to have auto update. If you see down in the bottom, you can see screen cap. What it's actually doing is taking a screen capture of all of my mouse clicks. This can be essentially used as your installation guide or recipe. At the upper right-hand corner, what it's doing is it's capturing all the process IDs that are being run. And if there's an error in any of them, it'll error out and stop the install. So it's looking for 0 exit codes. So it's completed the AppD install, and now it's doing a second install. And you may wonder why it's doing 2 installs, and it's because I asked it to. And the reason why I wanted to do, and here it's running the second snapshot, so it ran the first one. Well, the first one was pre-cached, so it's running the second one. And this is using the Aptitude OS snap.exe. I told you the rudimentary tool that we have to run all the, to do the MSI creation. So it's going to create a very rudimentary MSI at the end. So I'll explain why I did a double install for AppD packages. What you want at the end is an AppD package as well as an MSI package. The main reason for that is because you want to compatibility check it. So once you've compatibility checked it and imported it into Aptitude, you can then see is the application suitable for virtualization or not, or what changes would you have to make to that SPRJ or AppD project file to make it work. So once you're finished with this, you'll have your project files, and if your report is green, you're good to go, and you can just take that package and send it to UAT. Because as you probably know, AppD means very, very little risks. So deploying an AppD package has much less risk than an MSI package, simply because it doesn't have nearly as much of a footprint on the target operating system. So what this is doing is it's going through all the files and registry keys to see what changes were made by my application. That execution profile that was written is completely configurable, so you can add as many or as few tasks as you like. And this remote control will tell you where you are. So it's doing the after snap now. And I probably should have brought that screen up a little bit before so you could have seen that in the first install it actually had the command line sequencer running minimized. With that v4.6 SP1, you're getting a lot more configuration, and I haven't had a chance to really play around with that much yet, but a huge amount more automation that you can put in and options that you can have. Like you can create a template now. You could create, and you always could create a default SPRJ file for your AppD packages. All of these things and AppD accelerators can be embedded into the VM or copied into the VM during install time through Aptitude. So you could automate all of that. It's a fantastic capability. So what's happening now is that project is complete. It's been written to the output folder that I've defined. And now it's analyzing the extracted files, and it'll then import the application in. So the only thing I have left to do when this is complete, is kick off the analysis. So my output folder was called C Aptitude Output. So here are the files that were created. That screen cap that was running in the lower right-hand corner captured all of the screen clicks, or mouse clicks. And it gives you time, so you have some idea of how long that install took. Now I'm running this on all of it on my laptop, so that was quite slow, but typically it'd be a bit faster than that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I thought when I first saw Aptitude in my former job, I thought this was absolutely brilliant, because one of my biggest pet peeves in packaging was that people never gave you an install guide, and I thought this makes it so much. I mean, it's totally dummy proof. Even a user, even users can do it. Brilliant.
Are you insulting users?
I know, I believe that was recorded. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Users don't listen to these, and we're all laughing. We all insult users. It's our job. It's our job.
So I'll show you that. Let me just go back a screen again. These are all the files for the MSI. So it created a rudimentary MSI along with these the folders, the files for that MSI, as well as that in the underscore sequencer output folder, it's created the AppDNA package as well. So you can see the SPRJ file there, the OSD, the MSI, and the installer icons, and the manifest. So what it's doing now is it's finishing assigning it to a group. So when you're importing an application, one of the newer features of Aptitude, and it's only, I'm using a beta version at the moment, so if you do have Aptitude, you're probably seeing more than what you're used to. But what it's doing is it's assigning it to a group, which means now if you go into the applications list view, it'll be automatically broken down into certain types of licensing groups, which can be interesting if you're trying to view reports. Especially when we're coming to talk about web applications, which is going to be an exciting announcement that I'll make in a minute. So the loading completed successfully, and now we can analyze. You could choose to analyze across all of them, but I'll just select App B, because that's the one we're interested in. And I'll just let that go. Were there any questions during that?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of questions, but because of time limit, let's go ahead and do the demo. Show off. Let's finish the webinar, and then we can ask questions at the very end in case people do have a hard stop at the top of the hour.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll let that analysis finish. The demo that I just did was probably the core of it. I wanted to show just how we can automate that whole process. We've taken it even further than that, though. And let me just go back to this screen here. This BAU process, it all depends on, and what we found is among the large customers, the earlier you bring Aptitude into the process, the more savings you get downstream. But one of the things here in the discovery phase, when you're trying to collect that information, it would be interesting if we could put Aptitude here. So self-provisioning is a feature that we brought out in the last version of our product, 4.6. What that allows you to do is very similar to install capture. It allows you to put a very lightweight client down on an end user's machine and give them instructions on how to install the application on a virtual machine. So there have to be a management in the background to load that virtual machine, but once it's loaded, we just give you the instructions on what that user needs to do to install it. So if you can imagine, if at this stage here, which sometimes incorporates an install, you get the actual end user doing the install. So there's no kind of guesswork about whether or not you've selected the right options. You're letting them install it the way they want to install it, which could be really, really useful for a complex application. And that feature is called self-provisioning. So slightly different from install capture because it doesn't have the full automation, but also really, really valuable in the whole end stream. So if you think about automating each of the pieces you never had control over, it does give you a lot of value. And I'll quickly take you to the two customer case studies that we have here. So these are two very large customers. One is a cooperative group. We have published a case study for them, and I encourage you to have a look at it. Our marketing person, Penny, she's absolutely brilliant, and she's really excited about this case study. So she has tweeted it all over the place. If you haven't seen it already, I really encourage you to have a read. They started a really exciting project, which Aptitude had a really key piece in, taking 1,400 applications, and that was at their last count. They wanted to go 100% virtual. They expected to go 90%, but they actually achieved close to, they expected to go 80%, sorry, but they actually achieved close to 90%. They have 3,500 head office employees. They're all going virtual. And it's driving the packaging success. They're virtualizing apps in 48 hours that once took 2 weeks. The overall VDI project is saving them $3 million per year. So that's just a huge endorsement for what we're trying to do here. Another is a really large U.S. healthcare carrier. They're also quite innovative in that they're going Windows 7, very strong AppV and 64-bit technologies. They're trying to virtualize about 2,000 line of business critical applications. So they're really invested. They're doing applications. They have a center of excellence where they have their, the gurus sitting, and they're using the technology to better optimize what they're doing. So their virtualization project projected savings will be $2.1 million. These are all their numbers, and some of this was generated from that effort calculator report that I showed you earlier. So if we look at what they're expecting to save, day-to-day savings of $3.9 million each year, you can see there's a huge call for AppV, and there's a really great story here that we're seeing amongst the big companies, that they're really jumping into the virtualization bandwagon, and they're using Aptitude to get them there. So I ran through that demo there. Let me just see how it's coming along. So we've completed that virtualization report, and now we'll finish. So this particular application is red in AppV, and we'll have a look at why. So it has drivers. And we've identified what these, so this is the kernel service and SYS file. So we're saying that this application still could be virtualized. You just need to test it by installing those sys files locally. This falls into the group of machine-level components. So that would be the major issue there. There's 29 cases of that. There's also, looks like a SFT reader start, so boot time services. And you can kind of look through these and see which ones you think are relevant and which ones aren't. But it gives you an overall view of what the application was, what the standard RAG and what the customized RAG was, as well as if we went into the action report, we could see what type of actions would need to be implemented to fix that product or that problem. So I wanted to show you take the next step. So what would you do from here managing applications? Really encourage you to have a look at our free resources on appdna.com and get a video demonstration. Have a look at our migration workbook. We've outlined a lot of the kind of challenges I explained in that business as usual process. Fantastic white papers. We have a really good knowledge base of people, and we've come from diverse environments. So we've brought all that knowledge forward, and we've tried to shove it all on the website. So it might look quite busy, but there's some good stuff there. There's customer case studies as well, and if you're interested in having a demo or getting any pricing information, that's the link there. And we're on Twitter. So if this is a good time, I might make my announcement.
I was going to say, what's this big announcement? Yeah, please.
So an exclusive just for Doug Brown podcast listeners or webinar listeners, we're going live with our GA product for IE compatibility testing. And I think if you were looking carefully enough, you might have seen that we have an import for web applications as well. So we're going to make the big announcement tomorrow. So you're getting a sneak peek on what we're offering. And let me just show you quickly what that would look like. Now, I'm not going to run through this because, honestly, I'm on a beta build, and I just know every time I do something in a beta, it's going to just blow up. So I'm not going to show you the product yet. They are still doing a few tweaks. But for web applications, what you can do is add a web application URL, and what will happen is it will actually spider through that URL and collect all the web pages that have been visited. And it'll also kind of dive in and allow you to do form detection as well as manually browse. And the reason for the manually browse is that came as part of our beta project, where we found a lot of customers had login, web applications that need login, so you needed to give your credentials before you could continue on with that app. And it didn't really make sense to do any compatibility check until that was done. So really exciting stuff. We've been working on this for some time because we wanted to get it right. And our ethos is always get the accuracy there, and then the rest will follow. So we've got the accuracy, have some fantastic algorithms, and it's been a really exciting project because our developers actually created an in-house tool that they call Litmus. And with this, it's not a tool, it's more an application. This application is like the worst web app you ever saw. It has everything wrong with it. So we could check all of our algorithms to see if they're effective, and they are very effective. And we've kind of tweaked some of those algorithms, some of the RAG statuses during the beta testing. We had some really good customers involved. It had some complex web applications. So fantastic stuff we're going to see there. I encourage all of you to go look at our website, and I'll put that slide back up there again. Go up on our website and have a look. Tomorrow the announcement will be made, but you have the inside scoop, so feel free to tweet about it if you want.
Quick question, does that include support for Java-based web apps?
Yeah, the approach is that it doesn't really matter what the web app is written in. We have the capability of capturing both static and rendered content. So static content would be, say, the web files, whatever is hosted on the internal web server that makes up or comprises that web application. So I always use this example because in my very rudimentary HTML coding days, you create the index.html or the index.aspx. From that, all the other files that you need to load that web application. If you suck all of those into Aptitude, what you're getting is the template information. So we can read all the web templates. And typically, a lot of web applications, what they do is they use the template to then render background content. So once you have that template in there, and if you detect an issue with it, if you can focus on just that issue rather than 100 web pages that are rendered from the same template. But we also have this unique ability to dip into the source code. So if we find a problem in, not the source code, sorry, in the actual script, if we have a problem, if we see a problem in a JavaScript, something that was written, and it's embedded into or as part of the web application, if we detect that issue, something like a deprecated API call, we can dip straight into and take you straight into the line of code, and we'll expose the line of code. So it's more useful for a web developer to view.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, we have a few more questions. Let's stick around just a few more minutes and answer as many of these as we can. Does that sound good, Ann?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, cool. Let's get to it. So could you please explain DSC more in detail? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, dynamic sweeping composition, sorry. That's where, if you have an AppDNA package, it's usually got an OSD file. And the OSD file is an XML-based text file that defines shortcuts, minor information, file type associations, etc. for that package. It also directs it to the binary piece of the AppDNA package, which is called the SFT. Because AppDNA packages are designed to run in isolated instances, if you want them to work together, so let's say you have an application that has middleware, but you don't want to include that middleware into each of those AppDNA packages because, number one, it takes up a lot of server space. Number two, if you want to repair that middleware or patch it or change it, you have to, first of all, detect where you've installed it, which packages needed it, and then go into each of those packages and modify them. It's not a smart way to go. So what you would use is dynamic sweeping composition to link the two packages, and it's a very simple text change in the OSD file. And the newer AppDNA sequencers do allow some capability for making that modification.
Sounds good. So what is the success rate of the automation process? What percentage comes out as a fully working virtual application?
So that depends, again, on the compatibility. So I was talking to one of our customers, and they were one of the early adopters for AppDNA, so they're well into their project now. They use AppDNA automation for nearly all of their applications, and when I don't hear from them as a product manager, then that's good news. That means things are working fine. So what we're seeing is that the success of the actual automation piece is quite high. Now, the success of AppDNA packages tends to be somewhere, now it's getting better, I think maybe about 4 years ago when I was looking at this first, the success rate wasn't so great for AppV, or at the time SoftGrid. It was still good. It was probably about upper 60s, 70 if you look at business critical applications as well. But nowadays, I think it's closer to 80. I think people are getting 75% to 80% virtualization capability. But with Aptitude, you can get even higher, and that's because we give you solutions on how to fix those apps. So you don't have to stop when there's a problem, or you don't have to spend 2 weeks looking at it. We identify the issue up front, which means you can immediately focus on the right thing.
Sounds good. So how is the product licensed? The next question.
We have we have licensing structures in 2 ways. It's either per application, or we have an ELA license. An ELA license is probably more suitable for large enterprise organizations because they get an unlimited amount of applications over a 3-year period.
Sounds good. Can Aptitude help when applying updates to an existing package?
Yes. Okay. So for if you're importing the application for the second time, or if you're doing an upgrade the second time around, you already know that. I'm getting a little confused here. So if you import an application that's compatible with the target build and it's only a minor change, maybe one or 2 file changes, Aptitude can import that second one and overwrite the first. So if that's going to overwrite the first version of that product in your environment, we can overwrite it and run the report on that. And we also don't charge for the license if it's less than 10% change, or 10% up to 10% change. If it is a unique application and it does change quite a lot of features, then you probably want to treat it as a separate application. As far as applying the change to the newer version, that all depends on how that application is scripted. If it's an MSI format, you probably want to apply something like a transform. In that case, the remediation fixes, so we have some auto fixes, can be applied dynamically to that if you choose that option. And for AppV packages, it's a little bit different in that you have to open the package for upgrade. In that case, it really depends on the back-end system that you put behind the automation. So if you have all the packages and project files in one location, while you're going through it, it will be difficult to do a hands-free. I'm not even sure how you could do a hands-free upgrade, but you could walk through that automation process. So what I was running there when I ran my my AppDNA sequences, I did it all automated. You can dip into that and do it manually. So you could choose to select the project file and do the upgrade using the reports from Aptitude as guidance.
Sounds good. We have a interesting, good question. I like this question because this is one of the questions I usually have. And the gentleman would like to have access to the admin guide, and he can't find it on your site. Is that something that's part of the eval download, or how would he get his hands on the admin guide so he can look through that?
Oh, the admin guide. You mean the instructions on how to use the product?
Yeah, exactly. You know, we have engineers on the line, right? So they want to skip the marketing stuff. They would, open up the admin guide. That's what I do. So where do they get their hands on that?
It's all through our portal. So I think it's kind of just restricted for login access. But if you did need it, contact info@appdna.com and we can get you something.
Now, if they downloaded the eval, they would get the admin guide also, right?
Yeah, it should all be up on the portal. So I'm not sure. See, the portal is through a different account. So if you want an evaluation, we have to create an evaluation guide, or sorry, an evaluation account. Once you have the eval account, then you have access to documentation.
Cool.
So the first thing you need to do is go into info@appdna.com and say you're interested in getting an evaluation, and then they can take it from there.
Perfect. Good answer. Okay, couple more.
Operations team is top notch.
Yeah, that's because you have Penny. Penny is top notch. Okay.
She is.
She really is. So, next question. Do you have any coordination with Microsoft's CLI tool? Are you familiar? CLI. CLI.
The command line interface?
Yeah.
For AppV?
Yeah, I would imagine it. Just the question is written coordination with Microsoft's CLI, command line interface tool feature. That's all it says. So I would imagine. Oh yeah,
that's what if that's what I'm thinking it is. Yeah, the AppV CLI is exactly what we're using in the back end of that system. So that automation process is all driven through the CLI.
Perfect.
As far as AppV is concerned. We're also talking to the AppV team regularly to see how we can continue to improve this, and potentially if there's a good case for creating accelerators, what we can do to kind of bring all of that forward. So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing anyway what people think about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next question: can you host AppDNA infrastructure on virtual in a virtual environment? So, do you, sort of the nut of it is: do you require? If I could spit this out, do you require physical servers, or can the entire and the whole 9 yards be on virtual?
Yeah, it can be on virtual. I think you probably have a bit of a performance hit. It just sort of depends on the infrastructure.
Sure.
But yeah, we have an optimization guide, and it helps. It's a different license, a different type of license, so it's something that we would need to discuss with the customer.
Cool. Can you pass specific command lines to eliminate user prompts during the capture?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can.
Cool. How does AppDNA...
Unfortunately, the demo I used didn't have one, so I couldn't.
For time's sake. How does AppDNA identify a unique app from a licensing perspective? Is Adobe Reader V9 considered the same as Adobe V9.5?
That's interesting. It depends on the fingerprint. So what we do is we get a list of the files, or the number of files and registry keys in that application, and essentially the name of the application manufacturer. There's certain metadata that identifies an app, and we compare that. So if the application is significantly different, then it goes in as a different instance. But we also have this ability in our grouping. So grouping is quite important. We can group applications in estates like 1,000 or 2,000. Really important to kind of group them into logical segments. One of the things we can also offer as far as the grouping goes is something called a family. So if you have multiple Adobe readers in your environment, and you know that some of them are needed for different organizations, you can put them all into one family and create one as the primary or the lead application. So whenever you do your analysis or your reporting, you only really want to report against one version of Adobe Reader, so you can lump them all into one family. Likewise, and well, similarly, we have something called a suite grouping, and that allows you to take applications that have multiple MSIs, like Adobe Illustrator CS3. You can drop them into an Adobe Illustrator CS3 suite, and that will contain all 26 or whatever MSIs that comprise that MSI or that particular package, and report against that as one RAG as well.
Okay,
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. So if it doesn't make sense to the gentleman who asked the question, definitely just re-ask ask a follow-up question. We'll get to it. So just a couple more questions, and we'll call this an episode. So can Aptitude be licensed for an IT consulting firm? Oh, I had this question. Can I get excited? Can AppV be licensed for an IT consulting firm so that they can be used like a tool, like a service?
Yeah, and we've had companies do that. So we have HP and IBM. We have a few partners that are using, and they're typically global service or service integrators or system integrators, and they're actually doing this as a service for other customers. So they're building us into their solutions. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Web app compatibility is exciting. I love it. IE is great. Firefox and Safari included, even better. Does AppV agree? Or does AppDNA agree?
Well, I won't speak for the whole company, but from a product management perspective, we were shooting for the big kill, and that was we are looking to resolve the one last remaining big barrier to Windows 7 migration, and for that, it's IE. So we focused on IE. As always, we look for the market. If there is a great need to include the other browsers in there, then we will do so. And I don't want to risk offending Microsoft, but really what we found in some of our testing is that applications tend to work in the other browsers under IE because of the restrictions in how they're kind of clamping down on standards. That's why we're seeing more compatibility issues with IE. But that said, I think that with W3C standards and HTML5 coming on board, and the whole progression of web applications and how they're coded, I think people are going to see this across all browsers as well. But if you start with the more restrictive version, and that's IE, then you're probably going to be in a good position as time goes on. as a business as usual. So not just thinking of this as a point solution, looking at it more as how will you grow your business and how will you integrate this in a business as usual kind of process.
Perfect, perfect. Next question, which version of AppDNA Aptitude has this feature? Oh, what feature? So I didn't get to that in time.
The Web App Compat? Web App Compat?
Maybe that's it. So
that's the answer I want to give.
Yeah, well, that's the answer. He didn't ask, so I'm asking which version of AppDNA Aptitude has the Web App Compatibility feature?
That will be version 4.8 that will be released tomorrow.
Cool.
I think he might mean as well the production manager, and that's the automation piece that I demoed there earlier. That piece there with the automation of the sequencer or the sequencing, that's in the last few versions of Aptitude. So if people already have it, all they need is licensing for production manager. It is a different license. And self-provisioning is a new feature to 4.6. And self-provisioning is similar to the automation, except that it's not hands-free. You do have to integrate with it, and that's more for giving it to an intelligent IT business user or maybe a user of a complex application to gather the discovery information.
Cool. And then I have one more. The very last question is where can I get the complete documentation? So we've had 2 people ask us about documentation. So is that something we can provide via maybe DABCC or send something out directly to the people that registered? Maybe give them a link to that, or
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I'm not sure how embedded it is in our website. For now, the best thing to do is to go to info@appdna.com and request the user guide or the installation guide.
Perfect, and that's easy enough.
And we're all about documentation. It's good that people want to know.
Yeah.
I sometimes think we have far too much, but we document everything, and really we have a fantastic girl, Holly, who does a lot of our documentation, and it's really easy to read. It's fantastic and very comprehensive. So yeah. I'll just see if it's something that we're willing to kind of throw out there.
Perfect. If not, guys out there listening still, and we still have a lot of people on the line, which is surprising that we've gone 18 minutes over and still have this many people on the line. But, if you're still listening, or if you're listening to recorded version, just go out to or email info@appdna. Is that the app-dna.com?
Yes, the dash is very important. Info@app-dna.
Yeah, so in fact, it's here on the screen, info@app-dna.com, and just ask them say, hey, I was on the webinar, I want the documentation, can you help me here? And they'll hook you up. That's probably the best way. So if not,
give the reference of the DABCC webinar as well, and that'll help us identify, where the traffic's coming from. So it's great for Penny.
Absolutely, it's great for Penny. It's great for me too, because we want you guys to see that when we do webinars, we get a good response. So, and hopefully we're providing you guys out there listening a great webinar. That's my goal. It's great webinar gives good response, and we could definitely tell that this was a great webinar by how many people showed up, how many people stuck around, and how many people registered, which was one of our best. So on that note, Ann, I think that's about all the documentation. That's all the questions we have. My questions screen is just filling up with questions about documentation. So we have a lot of people that want that. Believe it or not, I used to post, and I still do, I post a lot of admin docs on DABCC, because I've always been like, hey, just give me the admin doc. I'll run through this. I'll read it, and I'll know all about this product. I'll see how it works. Just simple, right? So those are, who cares about case study? Well, I won't say that, but
oh my gosh.
Exactly. Marketing stuff will be, give me the admin doc, and I can really see what's going on, right? So
yeah, no, I hear you, and I feel the same way. That's brilliant. You guys are mad for documentation. I just want to make one last mention. We did have a broadband testing report. It's an individual report on the IE capability that Penny's also tweeted, and it's up on our website. So by all means, have a look at that. That report is actually quite comprehensive in explaining some of the functionality of Aptitude as I walked through it today. So it's not just about IE. There's also stuff in there about how the reporting looks and works. So a pretty good resource. Have a look through that. That might give you a bit of a hit until I give you the full manual.
Perfect. Now we're getting questions. Thanks, Ann. So on that note, it's time for me to thank you. The audience is thanking you, and this is a great webinar. I really enjoyed it. Great job, man. And if somebody wants to learn more, I think we've already beat that horse into the ground, but app-dna.com is a great place. We have some webinars or some podcasts on DABCC.com with both Ann and Samit from who's one of the amazing people over at AppDNA. So Samit is awesome, right? So yeah, you bet. So definitely refer back to that webinar. And on that note, guys, we'll just go ahead and call this an episode. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to DABCC Live, and thank you so much for doing a great job and being here today to present to all of us. And
thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. So, guys, thanks again. We'll call this a show.